Hi there, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and blog. Today I have card number 4 for you for my encouraging cards series. And as I've said before in the other 3, my goal is to try and make at least one encouraging card a week and then send that card out to someone who needs a little encouragement. So let's go ahead and get started with what I'm doing. I'm going to start off with some ink blending on some Kanzen XL watercolor paper. It's 110 pounds, so it's pretty heavy. And I am grabbing some blueprint sketch right now. This is Distress Oxides, and I really love how beautifully they blend together. It is like butter. And it's an interesting combo. I'm not even sure where I came up with it. I don't think I was just looking at my colors and I thought these would be pretty. So blueprint sketch into some shaded lilac. And then I am going to go into some tattered rose. And it's going to look like I'm not really doing anything with the tattered rose because it's very, very light. It's a very light pink. And I'm grabbing a Post-it here because your fingerprint will transfer. This stuff is still wet. So I'm just going to blend back and forth like I normally do. Going off with that tattered rose and blending it into the shaded lilac, and then I'll bring the shaded lilac back in a little bit just to kind of give a very even, beautiful blend. And I'm loving how it's turning out. I think I'm going to have this be a combo that I go back to every once in a while. More blueprint sketch and back to the shaded lilac. And then I'm going to use my distress sprayer. I'm going to flick some water on that, and then I'm going to let that dry for probably about a minute while I was cleaning everything up, and then I roll my paper towel roll over the top. What you saw there was my Tailored Expressions Build-A-Scene Mountaintops, and I put that over some Nina Desert Storm. And now I'm going to try and make them look a little bit more like organic snow on top. And so I'm using my Distress Resist spray, and this stuff is definitely going to give you an interesting look each time. You are not going to get the same look. It is very organic. You think you have control, but you don't. So I'm spraying that, and then I'm coating that with my white embossing powder. And then I will heat set that, and I end up really loving the look it gives. I started off using a dark brown originally, and I did not like the way that looked with my blended background. It looked too warm compared to the cool colors that I had used, so this is why I switched to my Nina Desert Storm. And I'm just heating that and watching that melt, and then I will layer those over the top, and you're gonna see how that looks. It just looks really pretty. Not at all what you'd expect for any sort of mountaintop. And I know, it's super hot outside for everybody, but I figured let's pull in a winter card. Let's cool things down a bit. Now I'm using my Tombow Mono Multi, and I'm going to just glue my pieces in place. I don't want a lot of dimension right at this point, so I'm just going to kind of glue everything down. And yes, I'll have a lot of hangover there. And I'm just going to, once I have the mountains in place where I want them, I am going to turn that over and I will trim that piece off. And then we have our scene all ready to go. So now I'm grabbing some Nina 80-pound cardstock, and I am going to use my Me and My Yeti stamp set from Mama Elephant. And I'm going to stamp that using some Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink because it's Copic friendly. And I'll do it a couple times just to make sure it's a good crisp image. The colors I'm using are very basic. They kind of match the blueprint sketch a little bit. I'm using BV20 to start with. And my light source is coming from the right side. I don't know why. I just like to pick a light source and go with that. And so the shading is all going to be more on the left side. And I always start with my lightest colors first. So that is why I'm starting with the BV20. It gets a good base down, and I don't put a lot of color. And then I'll move on to my BV02. When you put a little bit of that color down, those Copics stay wet for a little bit of time. And in doing so, then you are able to kind of blend your colors a little bit better. At least that's how it works for me. I know there are a lot of folks out there that like to start with their dark and move to their lightest shade, but I haven't found that works for me. And it's basically all personal preference, but I have found that I use less of the color when I do it this way. And so I'll go back over that with the BV20 to shade that out a little bit and to make it blend a little bit better. And then I'm going to move on to the BV04, which is a darker purple. and I'll add that in just the spots where I feel like it should be darkest, a very thin amount. And when I have what I want down there, I will go ahead and go back to the BV02 and blend that out again. Because the goal here is a seamless blend, at least this time. The fun of coloring is that you can do what you want, and it just relieves the stress, so I highly recommend doing some coloring from time to time. And then I'll go back over with the BV20 again, just to blend out those edges. I'm using a flicking motion there at the end. And then the final thing I will do is grab my colorless blender to even blend that out a little bit more. And once I'm done coloring him, I'm going to fussy cut him. I'm kind of doing that off camera. Sometimes I just get into a mode and I don't even pay attention to what I'm doing. So I apologize for that being off camera, but I'm just leaving a small white border around him. I don't have the dies as of yet, but I'm hoping to someday soon get the dies that match with this cute little Mama Elephant Me and My Yeti stamp set. For my sentiment, I am going to use my Simon Says Stamp Painted Hugs die, and I didn't have a cardstock that matched the background, so I'm grabbing just a scrap of cardstock, and I rubbed my blueprint sketch all over the top of that just to get the color that I needed, and that'll stay wet for a second, so I am going to have to heat set that. And you can see in the light it was kind of shiny. Yeah, I needed to heat set that because I plan to obviously run that through a die cutting machine, and if it's wet, it won't give a good cut, and it'll also transfer that color onto your cutting plates. So I'm going to trim that down to fit into my Xyron sticker maker. I love this thing. I have found that for intricate dies like that Painted Hugs, if it fits in my Xyron sticker maker, I plan to use that. So I run that through and it'll turn that piece of paper into a sticker. And I'll run some white through as well because I want to layer this. And so I'll trim that down to fit the Hugs die. And when I have 2 whites and 1 blue, I'm just trying to make sure that it'll fit okay. When I have the 2 whites and the 1 blue, then I will pull out my Sizzix Sidekick, my money maker. No, I'm just kidding. It doesn't make me any money, but I do love this thing. It's my workhorse. I use this die machine like crazy. So I'll run each of those through, and it'll be a sticky back sticker once I'm done. I decided to grab my Nuvo glitter pen and run that over the Hugs, but you have to be careful because the Distress Oxides are reactive to liquid. So I just kind of barely rubbed that over the top, and now I am stacking up my dies, or my die cuts. So it'll be 2 whites, and then I will have a blue on top of those 2 whites. And it'll almost be like a cardstock or a chipboard sentiment. So it's an embellishment all on its own. And I've covered my Yeti with some foam tape because he's gonna be popped up. He'll be the only dimension to this card. And I'm just placing him on there. I'm not setting him down as of yet. And I decided I needed a little bit more of a sentiment, so I grabbed my Simon Says Stamp You Got This stamp set and used my anti-static powder tool over over some black cardstock, stamped my image with the Versamark ink, coated it with some white embossing powder, and now I'm heat setting that to melt the powder. I'll let that kind of cool, rub off the excess anti-static powder, trim off the sentiment, and then I'll trim that down even more on the sides. And she'll be ready to go. And now I'll be ready to completely assemble this card. So I will put him down where I want him, making sure he's good and straight. Press down, and then I can do the same thing with my Hugs. I'll remove the sticky back, or the paper back, so that I can reveal the sticky. Put that where I want, and you got a little bit of wiggle room with that until you press it down firmly. So there I'm pressing it down, and I'll use some liquid adhesive to stick down the sending U. And I decided that at this point I did want to have something on the inside. So I'm going to grab my mini Misty and put this back in there, and I will put the Yeti down where I want him, and I'm going to stamp him down with the blueprint sketch. That way everything matches, matchy-matchy. And for a final bit of embellishment, I will grab my stickles. But I felt like he was just kind of floating there, so I did grab the BV20 marker and I kind of gave him a little bit of a shadow. And then I grabbed my enchanted stickles, and I'll just put a few of those down. And once I have all those down, that'll actually complete the card. So if you liked this card, please be sure to like it. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any more of the encouraging cards. And as always, thank you so much for stopping by.